At the end of the year, I make topster of all my favorite albums of that year. But I realized a couple weeks ago that I've never actually made a topster of all time. If you're curious about the topster of all time, this is what it looks like. I'm sure a lot of people will find problems with the list that I've just shown. Even I look at it and I think that I've left out albums that I enjoy or misplaced a bunch of them. But most of the people that have seen it have asked, what is that third favorite album? What is that A Crow Looked at Me album? And that's what I'm here to talk about today. The album itself is important to categorize and kind of explain before I talk about why it hit me so hard and why I have such a personal connection with it. I'm not going to dance around it too much. It is about Phil Everham's wife dying of pancreatic cancer and his struggle going through that. The whole album was written and recorded very soon after her passing, like probably too soon. And everything in this album, he does not consider art at all. I'll be getting into that later. I would definitely consider this art. Out of any piece of art, this is easily the one that's gotten the biggest emotional reaction out of me. And in that way, it is probably the most effective piece of art I have ever experienced. The biggest and most obvious point to this album is that it's just fucking depressing. You're reminded with this right off at the first track with Death Is Real. This is literally the first couple of lyrics in the album. These first couple moments in the album really set a tone for what the album is going to be for the rest of your ride. The album dives into what it's like to lose the person closest to you. Phil lost his wife and then immediately started working on this album. I feel like he wrote it almost as a form of therapy. Really, it just takes a good look into what it's like, what the raw feelings are right after a loss like this. Every once in a while, he will say something like, it's been a month or a week or even like a couple of days since you've passed. Because of this, you can really feel like you're in his situation and understand how raw and emotional this is. In the song Seaweed, he literally says, you've been dead for 11 days. He wrote this 11 days after. After a while, I thought I would just become numb to the constant sadness and not have such a visceral reaction as I did to real death, but the album just continues to punch in every single song. The song that stands out to me as the most devastating is Toothbrush/Trash. It's towards the end of the album, and it is just pure sorrow. Even after I thought this couldn't get sadder, I couldn't keep fucking crying to everything, this song hit me like a fucking truck. The way that he writes his song almost feels like you've been through it with him because he writes it more as a journal and less like a song. So that makes you feel a lot more empathetic or sympathetic for him. A lot of the album is written at face value. Everything is matter of fact, not a whole lot of poetry to say, which is the next thing I'm going to talk about. So the poetry in this album, like I said, is very blunt and face value, but he does sprinkle in a little bit of nature poetry, I would say. And that's why we're out here, baby. Tracks like Forest Fires and Ravens are a good example of this. A line that stands out to me is, I watched you die in this room, then I gave your clothes away, I'm sorry I had to, and now I'll move. This is a line from Ravens, and it is not covered in colorful words or poetry, it is just straight to the fact, depressing sadness. The album is filled with these kinds of lines, and the way that they're read out constantly leaves you on a perpetual cliffhanger where you're waiting for the next word to be said to complete a sentence, and you're constantly thinking about the words that have already been said. The album itself is extremely visual because of his blunt style in lyrics. The way he sings about his town that he's in Washington, makes it seem almost like he's trapped in this town. We've all been in points like this where it feels like we can't really go outside of our bubble, and that's why you can sympathize with Phil in these parts of his songs. The way that he almost obsesses over every detail of this area, you can almost picture the misty, depressing mountain area that he lives in. I've looked up pictures of this area, and it's actually pretty fucking beautiful, but compared to this album, it's completely different. Most of his lyrics are really depressing, but there's actually like high notes on this album. He talks about sunsets and like beautiful nature, which is why, again, we're out here. Beautiful mountains of Salt Lake City. I'm gonna call it here for this location. Sun's going down, you wanna pan over to the sun? This is getting to be
okay, hold on, no.
I'm gonna film the rest of this in a second, but not here because the sun is going down. We should probably go home, go down the mountain. This video is also getting pretty depressing, so I'm gonna cut in some videos of us shitting around on this hike. What are you doing?
GG's. No more hikes when no snow.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Alright, so hopefully you guys liked that little break thing that we ended up doing. I don't know what Talon's gonna edit into that little portion.
Yo, that's me.
But just some quick notes before I get back into the whole review. There was like a little gray thing like right here or something during the footage, and I saw it when I looked back at it after we finished our hike. That's really fucking annoying, but it shouldn't be a problem now. Another thing is I forgot to bring my mic up on the hike, so we just used the camera's audio. Another is that hike was fucking terrible. I have some shots of us going down and I just kept slipping in the snow and the ice, and it's like the shakiest, ugliest fucking shit ever. Back into the video. Phil does not see this album as art. If I were to guess, he sees it more of a way to express how he's feeling and to cope with the loss of his wife. The album is not meant for entertainment. If you like his style and want a more entertaining album, you can listen to any of his other albums. They're all pretty good. But as far as what I would consider art, this is definitely the strongest piece of art I would ever experience. This is all stuff that I've already said, but the style of his singing puts you into his head and how he's processing through all the things that he's processing through. The imagery of nature is amazing and it's very visual. You can see it with your ears, so to speak. Even the concept of the album is something that every person goes through eventually in their life. The album is extremely powerful. I would say sometimes maybe even too powerful. That is why I ended up not listening to it again. It's an amazing piece of art. I would probably consider it a masterpiece, but I don't think that I could ever put myself back into that mindset because his imagery and what he wanted us to feel was just too strong. It just doesn't feel right. The first time listening through, I was emotionally fucked, honestly. Like, it put me into his situation, and I don't think I could be back into that situation again. I don't think I would want to. And if I did listen to the album again and I enjoyed it as much as I did the first time, I would feel guilty for almost basking in the death of his wife. That doesn't feel right at all. In conclusion, like I said, it's honestly a masterpiece. It's a 10 out of 10 album, and I would recommend it for anybody, but maybe just listen to it once. Like I showed at the start with my Topster, there are my top 3 albums. That is Strawberry Jam, Twin Fantasy, and A Crow Looked at Me by Mount Eerie. And at any point, those 3 could be my favorite or second favorite or third favorite. It all just goes through a rotation. So all that being said, this is the best album that I've only listened to once.